Russia strikes Kharkiv as attacks on Ukraine intensify. 2 Russian strikes on Kharkiv, Ukraine's second-largest city, killed 8 civilians and injured at least 10 early on Saturday, and in the afternoon, regional officials said.
At least 8 people are dead and 10 others wounded following 2 Russian strikes on the Ukrainian city of Kharkiv on Saturday, regional officials said. Ukraine's national police said the attack was launched by drones, while regional officials said Russian forces used missiles and bombs. Kharkiv's mayor said residential areas were hit, including high-rise buildings and a gas station. The first strike occurred just after midnight, according to news reports, while a second took place later in the afternoon. This local resident said the explosion woke her up. The fuel station was on fire, she said, adding, "They yelled at me, 'Get out.' I stood there and stared. Only later I walked out. There was another explosion and everything started falling." Located in the northeast, Kharkiv has been a frequent target of Russia's assault, with attacks intensifying in recent weeks. Air raid alerts could be heard across the capital Kyiv and remained in effect for Kharkiv and most of the country following the strikes. Ukraine's military said its air defenses destroyed 28 of 32 drones and 3 of 6 missiles launched by Russia. It follows deadly strikes on Friday in the southern city of Zaporizhia. Local officials said Russia fired 2 missiles, then 40 minutes later fired another 3 as first responders and journalists were on the scene. 2 journalists covering the aftermath of the strikes were among those wounded in the city, which is near the front line in the war with Russian forces. In the east, Ukrainian forces on Saturday said they are still in control of the town of Chasiv Yar. Russia's RIA news agency released a report earlier, citing Russian forces as saying they had entered the suburbs of the town. Ukraine's military said the report was untrue. Russian forces are inching forward in eastern Ukraine after capturing Advika in February. Kyiv's soldiers are trying to dig in, facing long-term shortages of artillery shells with U.S. aid stuck in Congress.
Anti-government protesters, police scuffle at Tel Aviv rally. Anti-government protesters calling for the resignation of Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu scuffled with police during a rally in Tel Aviv on Saturday, April 6th. Northern Gaza hospital receives supplies and aid. A hospital in northern Gaza received much-needed medicine and other supplies on Saturday, April 6th. Kamal Adwan Hospital became the main hospital in the northern part of the Strip after Israel's destruction of Gaza's biggest hospital in a raid over the past 2 weeks.
طبعا بعد خروج مستشفى الشفاء عن الخدمة وأصبح هناك أعداد كبيرة جدا تتوافد إلى مستشفى كمال عدوان في شتى التخصصات، والكل يعلم مستشفى كمال عدوان هو مستشفى صغير، ولكن رغم ذلك ورغم شح الإمكانيات والمستلزمات وجهنا عدة نداءات يعني استغاثة لكافة المؤسسات الدولية ومنها منظمة الصحة العالمية، والحمد لله رب العالمين اليوم وصل إلينا بعض المستلزمات والأدوية المهمة جدا لمستشفى كمال عدوان، اللي إن شاء الله هذا حيجعلنا نحن نقدم خدمة آمنة لأبنائنا في غزة وفي شمال غزة إن شاء الله.
Mexico breaks ties with Ecuador after embassy arrest. Latin American governments, including regional heavyweight Brazil, rallied around Mexico on Saturday, April 6th, after its embassy in Ecuador was raided to arrest a controversial politician who had been granted asylum by Mexican authorities. This report produced by Freddie Joyner.
An Ecuadorian security convoy escorted the country's former vice president Jorge Glass out of court on Saturday morning, just hours after the controversial politician was seized late at night from the Mexican embassy in the capital of Quito. The move triggered a suspension of diplomatic ties with Mexico.
México anuncia el inmediato rompimiento.
Mexican Foreign Minister Alicia Bárcena said all diplomatic personnel in Ecuador were to leave immediately. Glass, who has been convicted twice for corruption, had been holed up in the embassy in Quito since seeking political asylum in December. Mexico had granted the request earlier on Friday. Mexican President Andrés Manuel López Obrador blasted the unusual diplomatic incursion and arrest as an authoritarian act as well as a breach of international law and Mexico's sovereignty. The government of Ecuador's president, Daniel Noboa, had argued asylum protections were illegal because of the corruption charges Glass is facing. Still, under international law, embassies are considered the sovereign territory of the country they represent. On Saturday, governments across the political spectrum in Latin America, including Brazil and Colombia on the left, and Argentina and Uruguay on the right, sharply criticized the arrest of Glass. In 2017, Glass was sentenced to 6 years in prison after he was found guilty of taking bribes from a Brazilian construction firm in exchange for awarding it government contracts. As he faced a fresh arrest warrant on separate graft charges, Glass has claimed he is the victim of political persecution, a charge Ecuador's government has denied. The arrest caps a week of escalating tensions between Mexico and Ecuador. Ecuadorian officials were angered by López Obrador's comments on the South American country's bloody elections last year, in which a presidential candidate was assassinated.